My name is Josh Smith. My wife Megan and I started attending Southpoint about 3 years ago. And like Dennis, I've been a Christian for about 25 years. So
Awesome. All right. So, appreciate sharing. So, kind of we'll talk about what God has kind of been doing lately, the most recent in your life. What would you describe yourself? How would you describe yourself before this kind of change?
yeah, so I think there's some similarities to Dennis's story as well. Been a Christian for 25 years. Grew up knowing who Jesus was, learning about the Bible, going to church every Sunday, singing Christian songs with the family. And I was certainly somebody that I cared about other people and wanted to be a good example of who Christ is to others, try to put others first and, be an example of Christ's love to others. But kind of like Dennis said, definitely like things structured and planned out, and those structures and plans, oftentimes, whether I'd like to admit it or not, they revolve around me. And so if things, worked into my plan and worked into like my scope, the way I wanted the day to go, then, I'd step into those things, no problem. But if not, then, they might go by the wayside. So certainly not necessarily living every day intentionally, like getting up, spending time in the Word every single day, praying for, myself, let alone other people, and certainly not looking for opportunities to, make disciples of Christ and share the gospel with others. Yeah, I think for me, the first thing that kind of changed was several years ago. I started noticing, like, my boss would come in every single day. Like, I work for a landscaping company in Utica. He kind of come in every day and just started coming in really stressed out and kind of starting out the day angry. Like, it really felt like none of us could do anything right. And on top of that, was dealing with a coworker that every day, like, his day was definitely about him, and really inconsistent work ethic or no work ethic whatsoever. And so that made your job a lot more difficult. And so I got to a point where it's easy to be affected by those things. Like, I don't think anyone would be unaffected by that, but it really started to ruin my day, I think, and then I would start to actually react and push back more. And I'm not really sure what changed outside of, I think I realized like my day became more stressful because I was letting their stress and their anger really affect me and affect how I would react. And they weren't changing. Like, just because I got upset or I tried to push back, there was no positive change in them. So just from a logical sense, that was kind of where my thought process was. And so begrudgingly, I kind of started thinking, all right, well, you push back, kind of try to get stronger people back and stand up for yourself. So like, why don't you try to actually do what Jesus would do? And so, actually put them first and expect that other people are going to be about them. But like Jesus would look at that and he'd expect that, and he would care about them, and he would love them, and he'd pray for them. So I actually started to pray for them, and whether it was they actually changed, or it was really just changing my mindset. My relationship with my boss, who is a Christian, has been way better ever since. And we've actually had a lot of really good conversations about Christ and kind of what he's doing in our lives as individuals, but even in our company. And that coworker was kind of paying because I changed my mindset. I kind of started to make it more about him and something like, you can do a little extra work, like it's okay, like Jesus died for you, you can do this. So I was actually able to have a really good relationship because I didn't push, he didn't push, and so we actually worked out all right. And I was able to have some conversation with him about Jesus, and just was able to have a better relationship with him as a whole. It was just that time in the small group with Mark, and that small group was like really specifically built around like what does it mean to actually be a disciple of Christ and ultimately make more disciples of Christ. So the first thing that changed is actually just like really in my own life, and my life at home with my wife. Mark has said several times on the stage, but certainly in our small group, that it's really, really important to pray with your spouse. And that's something that I'm kind of like more quiet and reserved person in general, but for whatever reason, there was like a mental block there of just not stepping into that and not wanting to spend that time in prayer with my wife. And even just spending time in the Word every day, I was really concerned with friends and family and like where was their walk, and like praying for them, and checking in with them and how their week was going, if they were spending time, but I wasn't necessarily spending time, praying for the things that I would need, or to be changed in my life, or spending time specifically in my life. And I certainly wasn't praying with my wife every single day, and that's something that she definitely voiced as something she wanted. So I finally got to a point where I just told her, I'm like, hey, like, I really suck at this, but if you're willing to help me with this, then we can step into that. I know it's important. So it's really just as simple as putting some time aside each night, and it's a short devotional when we talk about what we're learning, and take 3 or 4 names and just spend some time in prayer. And the really cool thing that happened was that in one of our small groups, we talked specifically about the gospel and knowing what the gospel is and what it means to you, and then being willing to share the gospel, being able to share the gospel with others. And so the very next day, I got up, so I actually said a prayer, hey, we talked about this all night, and we learned about this. If I'm supposed to step in this conversation with somebody, please, make that very clear, and then give me the courage to obey, and what to say to that person. So I got to work, and the first thing my buddy says to me, he knew I was going to these groups. He's like, hey man, so you learned anything cool at group last night? So I kind of looked at that there's times where you're kind of in a gray area, should I share this gospel or not? But when he asked that straight up, if I don't walk into that and share the gospel in that moment, that's a huge fail. So it was cool. He asked me what I learned, so I just shared what I learned, and I shared with him, what the gospel meant to me. That God created me, that I'm a sinner, but Jesus loved me enough to die for me and raise again, and that's why I'm going to heaven, not because of me. And I just asked him a lot of questions, got to know him, and we're just a little bit better. And eventually told him, hey man, this is what my relationship with Christ is like, and this is what it means to me. If you want to step into that, please let me know. I'd love to walk through that with you, or if you want to check out my church or my small group, it's really cool. You got some questions about the Bible, because he'll read the Bible from time to time. Absolutely, ask him. I won't always have the answer, but let's find it together. And so he didn't accept Christ that day, but something else we're learning is that really the goal is the conversation. The goal is that we just have to be obedient, and God's going to give us the words to say, and we can't change anybody. So when you have that mentality, it's really hard to fail in that situation outside of where you're just unwilling to have the conversation. So you play your part, then you let God change that person's heart.